Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 253 of my modded Factorio playthrough. In this episode, we are going to upgrade our coke and carbon setup. Enjoy. So we're looking at basically 5 belts for all of that, which is not a problem. They'll just have to come in down here, but it's good that we know that we need it, so we'll leave some spaces in there for it. And some other things we'll need. I don't know if we're going to want to build it all the way out here because we're going to need to make limestone. Setup will be a lot smaller than this with the modules, but it'll have to be somewhere. Otherwise, that covers most of the things. So yeah, it's just a question of fuel. So how much coke are we making? It looks like it's this one right here. We're actually making 60 a second, which is more than I was expecting. But it's probably because a lot of that's going into making carbon, which that could make 30, and that could make 30. So we probably are going to want to upgrade this, and one thing that's been put off for quite some time is upgrading our carbon production here to use nitrogen because I didn't want to have extra byproducts. Let's make sure there's no better coal processing methods in here. I don't think so. A while ago we did unlock the ability to make coke pellets, but those are basically just for fuel reasons. And we did unlock the coal cracking processes. One to make coke. And it would make a lot of gases too, but it would make coke and hydrogen sulfide gas. We could also do it and get naphtha, natural gas liquids, and oil. We do need the oil, and we do need the natural gas, but it would require hydrogen as an input. Or this other method, which is basically for the synthesis gas, which we don't really need right now. But we do have some options of making coke. What about the carbon? Looks like we're basically already doing it. That this other method up here is essentially the best one. So one is using charcoal, and that's just from trees. That would be an infinite way of doing it that didn't require the coal to begin with. And the other way is just making it from coke. But the question is, do we do it with the method using steam or not steam? Well, let's compare them. So we want to do carbon. We'll try it the first way. Let's say we wanted to have 90 of them. And it would require 900 steam. Let's see. Hey, we can get that on here with the electric boilers. Is there a difference between these two? I guess one uses purified water and one does not. Doesn't really matter. I guess it does if it's like a power generation setup that's using purified water, but let's just use the regular one. Boiler 2s. Needs 15 of them, but we could use the speed modules in there to use a lot less of them. So that's all there is to that, and it would require 23.5 megawatts to make that happen. Let's try the improved method, which we're not using right now, from nitrogen and sodium hydroxide. And I think part of the reason we didn't want to do this is because of the difficulty of getting sodium hydroxide. Let's see, these numbers look strange. I'm not sure why. Oh, because they're linked? I don't care about that. Let's back it out then. And let's just do a new one. We want 90. The sodium hydroxide will have to come from somewhere. We'll need to do the nitrogen gas. We'll do that from the air separation. And of course the air filters. And then it has the byproduct of sodium carbonate, which if we electrolyze it, we can turn it into sodium hydroxide and some carbon dioxide. And then that solution can be turned back into the sodium hydroxide itself. So we look at this process. What would it give us? Well, it would require dealing with electrolyzers and electrodes, and we would have to wash those. We would get some mineralized water out of it. We would get carbon dioxide out of it. We would get oxygen out of it. And it would basically otherwise be a closed loop, and it would require 6.8 megajoules. Where this other method is 23.5. So it's kind of an interesting process. I'm not really sure what the advantage is of it. I mean, it does use less power, but it's not that much less power. Like, one thing it could be is it's a dump for sodium hydroxide, I suppose, because it makes sodium hydroxide disappear. But then you have sodium carbonate that you have to get rid of. So I guess the question is, with sodium carbonate, what does that go into? Well, it does go into the next tier of aluminum. It does go into chrome and cobalt. and glass. So I suppose this is an interesting method of generating it if you need it. And then it makes a sodium hydroxide solution, which just makes basically the sodium hydroxide, or some of this other stuff, I guess, if you wanted it. So it's kind of interesting, where I guess it would generate all these things if you really needed it to. But I'm not sure if I really want to go through all that effort right now. I guess it depends on where the coke is made and how many byproducts they have. So we have a couple of choices. The first way was to grind it from crushed coal into coke. And then we're doing this method, which just adds the purified water. Still get the same output, but it will generate sulfur. But I don't know if this is really that important now because we're always in sulfur overload. So I don't know if we need to keep doing it that way. And then the other methods are with these gas processes. So one interesting thing you can do with the gas condensates is turn those into coke if you want to. And some other stuff. I don't know if we have enough of that right now to need to do that. But we have these other methods. So I guess the question is are they any more or less efficient? So the way we're doing it now, we need to have, let's just say 60 of them. And it has to come from crushed coal, so that would be the input of 30. What about one of these other methods? So let's say our output was 60 of them. That would require 50 of coal. So this one would only require 30 and this requires the 50. So this method would be used if you actually cared about all of these extra inputs. And do we care about that? Well, we do need to make the natural gas, but that just comes out of the gas well. So those processes wouldn't help us here. So the washing is probably not that bad of a method still. But when you look at these carbon methods, either with steam or going through this process, it's also going to require an additional 60 coke, which means in total we would actually need to make 120. And then it just becomes a question of scale, because you can see all of the wastewater we would have to process, which is kind of what's already going on here. So this would only be half as big as it would need to be. And we have to be careful about not pushing it up too far because of potentially where belts would be. So this actually doesn't have that much space to get bigger, which is kind of interesting, because a lot of this space needs to be saved. Well, it would certainly be smaller with speed modules. That's going to be belt limited and inserter limited. But because of that throughput, we would basically need to have this in 3 groups, even though it only requires the 5 hydro plants in total. It's probably still worth doing because it is a sulfur generator. There's no disadvantage to just getting rid of the sulfur. So I'm thinking we probably won't do the advanced version of the carbon making for now, just because it's a lot of stuff that would have to happen. I don't really think it's worth it. We can kind of connect all these together. We need to have our 90, and we probably want even more than 90 because it is used in making like electronics and things. So it might be worth even having like 120. So that would require an 80 input in addition to our 42. So we'll just say 120. Let's see, it's not too much water for steam. So I think we would need the same number of hydro plants. 5 for the wastewater and then 5 for the purified water if the wastewater wasn't working. So we would need 20 liquefiers for the coke and like 6 or 7 for here. So actually it wouldn't really be that much different in size now that I think about it. It'll just need more belts. So it'll still have to change, but it won't actually be that much different. So that's kind of refreshing to know. So anything else we need to worry about? Well, we do need to do a limestone setup. And luckily it's limestone, not lime, which is nice. That means we won't have to cook it or anything. We just need to go down the water processing path here. And that's it. So that's actually rather compact. It'll create some mud and whatnot, but it'll be taken care of. And we need that huge pile of oxygen. We'll now do that with air separation. And I'm always amazed that the higher tier machines and these speed module 5s make even rather large numbers not take that many machines. Kind of a lot of air filters though, but they can go anywhere. But only basically 6 of the chemical plants to make that. And then we'll just have to dump the rest of the nitrogen, but I'm thinking this looks pretty good. There's no crazy numbers that we won't be able to keep up. So I think we're good. Now we need to kind of figure out where all this stuff will go. The main thing I'm thinking about is, where do these setups start? Do they stay exactly where they or are things moved a little bit? And we can kind of figure that out with belts, because we know we're going to have 2 belts of coke and 3 belts of carbon, plus this other fuel belt. So we're going to have a total of 6 belts coming through here. And it looks like basically everything will be able to stay with those belts in there, which is nice. Let's clear out some trees, but leave the tiny forest. There they come. Nom 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 nom. But basically it would come through here. So we're going to need to upgrade this setup. Well, let's see what we can do. And I think enough of it is going to be different to where we're probably going to want to kind of rebuild this. We still may be able to make it fit, since I think a couple of the items are going to kind of move around a little bit because we need to widen it for the extra belt throughput and probably extra pipes as well, that it might be a little easier just to do it somewhere where we have space. Alright, we will, I guess, plop it in right there. Kind of pick through this thing here. There's going to be some extra pipes and things in the way, but we can't use the upgrade planner though. Let's see, what's it going to replace? Let's make sure we're not switching that. It's bringing pipes in. No, don't do that. We had some, go back, sitting in a box somewhere. So the first thing we're going to have is 4 output belts. There's a lot of pipes that are unrelated to all of this stuff just kind of sitting around in here. We're going to need our 4 outputs here. And it's really not that many machines. But let's see what we're going to need here. Can we even do it? Well, we might be inserter limited, because it has to do 24 per second on 2 different belts. And we would only have 2 inserters. To have any hope of maxing this out, we'd probably want to have 2 inserters, so only 1 speed module per machine. So what would that look like? We would need 10 of them in total, which isn't terrible. We can do an efficiency and a pollution while we're there. But we can't really do 10. We're putting on 2 belts here, so it would have to be 12. But it would be kind of something like this. So the raw input would come in there. And I think that covers all of those. Hopefully there won't be any throughput issues. And then that's the input, which comes from the mines. And we have our 4 belts of output. Now we have to build this to support that. Well, for now, I'm going to pick up all of this junk. So it's 1-to-1 ratio. So now we need to have 20 of these. And it'll be 5 to a belt, which is kind of a weird number, so we might want to plan on 6. Let's see what kind of numbers. That's pretty good. That's basically 1 inserter. Worry about where all these pipes go later, because it's probably going to be a little different. And it's just going to be a distance changing inserter. Probably can afford to have the power poles on the ends here. We'll worry about getting all these pipes lined up in a bit, because we do have throughput considerations. So let's grab all of this now. So this will handle 1 of our belts, 36 per second, which is good. Now we just need to do the same thing, but it's probably not going to let us flip it. So we'll have to do it manually. That does seem pretty good. Of course, we're going to have all of these belts that need to come in here. Probably want to leave a little bit of space. So we'll make all the bots move them one square over. And we'll just pick all this junk up here too. And let's see, as far as getting this centered, well, I guess we can kind of worry about that in a second, because we need to put this in here now, and it would go basically up there. So it looks like this whole thing would have to be up by one square for it to be lined up. So it would be like right there. So I'm thinking that's pretty good. So that should be our 120, which it is. Then that should be our 120, which it is not, but I guess there's missing modules, so that would explain it. And then it would go into a storage warehouse. But we'd also have our water treatment plants, which can go anywhere. Guess we'll just put them on the end here. It looks like it's basically 5 and 5. Let's have the one at the bottom be the sulfur generating one, so it's just a little simpler. Guess put them right next to each other for now. So that's the sulfur, although gotta remember throughput that we have 3,000, which means that putting them on the end here probably won't really work. So maybe lined up like right here. You'd probably have to actually go the long way around, now that I think about it, because of throughput. So it would be something like that, going through a bit of a loop here, and this would have to be moved down, but so that way, like, 750 can go this way and 750 can go the other way. Another option to doing it like that is to just have them on all four corners, which might actually be cleaner despite it being, well, kind of square to the squared degree, doing it in that way. But if that's the case, well, then we don't need that many speed modules. We can cut it down a little bit. So then we wouldn't have to really worry about this. We'd have one less machine. There would be two machines here, and then another two doing the water purification if required. And actually, they could just go the other direction. And there would need to be some kind of buffer tank. Let's see if we have any. I'm sure the robots picked a few up, but I'll just make another one with our pump here. Basically, just to top it up if it got low. And we did have some kind of system coming here to save water. I'm not sure exactly where that's coming from. Oh, it looks like it was being processed from down here. But when was the last time this even ran? It doesn't run very much because of all of the spores up here, so I kind of just don't even want to do anything with it. Just leave it unhooked and see what happens. But let's see, this one needs to pump until the water is below probably 80% because we want to have a nice strong flow here. So to like 16,000. They'll keep the tank topped up. It'll leave a little bit of room for these hydro plants to run if they need to. And then that water will have to be pushed back in there somehow. Alright, let's see if we can find a better spot for this. It's going to want to be lined up with this. With some spaces in here. So let's double check where this will produce 900 water. And this can take care of more than 900, and it will also require 900 water, and if we put the speed modules in there, that would produce it. Although looks like we calculated that it can use some efficiencies in here instead, and that should be fine, because although it's saying 900 water, that's for 36 per second, and we'd be doing less of that. Going to have some byproducts which are going to have to be shipped around, but what can you do? And actually, we're going to want to extend these down Okay, I don't think these things are going to be very close to water. Not really. So we'll do some water pump jacks. Actually, might as well just kind of put them together. And then we'll also need to have a way of getting rid of the water, and I guess it depends on how well this fits in here. Because it would be nice if it all did. And I think we might need to calculate this out here. So 3,000 water. Let's see, we'll just pick one of the liquid ones. Say the input is 3,000. But with speed modules, means we would need the 6.25, so in other words, 2 of them per setup here. But they would need to be like on the end of this with a pump in there. And something like there. And say it has to be greater than 16,000 to pump everything away. And then we need our 3 pump jacks in here. I think that's looking pretty good. So it seems like most everything's connected except for these water pipes here, which would be connected later. And now we need to do the same thing, but it doesn't let us flip it. And I don't know if I want to manually flip it on the other side. Or we can do it down here out of the way, which might make more sense, although it's probably going to be a practical limit to how big this thing can be. When you consider that. Basically this right here. So it can't really be any bigger. So probably should have these belts going up like that. Because once they're going this way, it's nice having that over there as an idea of how big it is. Once they're going over that way, now it's out of the way. Kind of. Something like that. If it'll all fit though. Because that's always the problem. Because unfortunately this is kind of backwards. Well, let's just see if this would actually fit before I spend too much time messing around with it. Yeah, kind of, but not really, unfortunately. Fits fine in that direction. Although I was thinking I was worried about pipe distances, but these pipes these days can go really far. And basically jump over this whole thing. So that said, we could probably smash this in here pretty tightly. And actually knowing that, we could really come in here. Although it should probably be placed a little far away. So there's walking distance between all of this. So something like this. This is one setup. So we can plop another one in here. And now we can get an idea for size. Because it would be kind of like right up to here. Man, that is getting pretty tight there, but I think we're good now. And these need to jump over there, which they can, which is great. Now the fun task of inverting it. I kind of don't want to. So, let's grab all of this. And instead of inverting it, pick out all of the things that probably don't flip nicely. Like the tanks, the clarifiers, hydroplants, and the pump jacks. And there's not much left. There's a skeleton here. But now we can flip it. And there's a 3 square gap. And a 1, 2, 3. Although the positions of the pipes do kind of change. Which of course is the kind of the problem here, but most of it's lined up. Let's see, we got to get these flipped around, I think, to make them the same. The positions of these have to change. Yeah, dealing with the pipe throughput issues is always a little annoying when you have setups that get larger and larger. But it is what it is. This is so annoying when all these things get misaligned because you just want to flip it around and everything gets all misaligned. Basically gonna have to redo it. Because all these pipes got mixed together. Now we just need to get all the acids. So it'll all come in here, jump across, be combined with this, and probably go to where it needs to. or maybe turn to the right there. Then there's the mineralized water and the saline water. And that gets all the waters connected. So probably pretty close to seeing how this works. Hopefully no surprises. We'll get the robots in there once it's been placed. So hopefully our design will fit within this little space here. And if it's flipped the right way, yeah, it seems to. Oh, so barely, but it does. Okay, we need to carefully peel away what we need to here. I guess that's being rebuilt anyway, so it's okay for there to be some overlap there, so we'll just kind of keep picking all this up. And then when placing this, it basically goes right here, which means that some of this is in the way, because it's like right here. We've got an old carbon dioxide setup down here that needs its own red belt. So let's add an extra one in here. Probably can do this storage warehouse a little better by having them all feed into the same building, but just less than 200. So there'll be room for robots to bring any coal in there that they need to. Let's see, these have speed module 2s in them. That's probably not necessary. But I imagine the productivity modules will actually do quite well here. Kind of. They are a little slow. So something like this ought to work for all of these. Let's get the robots in here. Gotta upgrade this whole thing to red because it potentially can put out that much sulfur. So that's good. The sulfur's good. Looks like we had a sulfuric wastewater delivery here from somewhere. But let's just hook it up and keep it working. We gotta get another hookup in here. It's trying to hold 10,000. And it's doing some outputs. One to a depot. Makes sense. I'm sure it's going somewhere important. Some of it will go that way, which makes sense. But ultimately, we're going to need 2 belts of it going to the right. And it's going to look kind of funny if all the belts are mixed up, so let's just claim this spot right there. Looks like some carbon is being taken away there, which will change. Okay. We've got our belts up there. We're going to need to hook up the acid wires again, which I hadn't really thought about when designing this, but oh well. I'll just haphazardly jump across these. The relevant pipes seem very much hooked up. We've got everything else hooked up that used to be. Look at all the colors. So we should be able to hook this up now and see how it works. It's basically the same as before, just a little bigger. Looks like nears and fars aren't quite hooked up. So it's out of purified water here because saline water is filled. This pipe isn't connected here. Is it connected on this side? I think so. Well, that's all hooked up then. Next, we need to handle the carbon, which this will be a lot more straightforward. Just lots of boilers And a couple of machines here. There's a carbon train right there. So we're probably not going to want this method. And we can pull all this out for now. Let's see, we really only need to expand this a little bit. I don't know if we're making electric boilers. We only need a few of them. Well, I guess we need more than a few because these are the previous tier. Let's get all these pipes upgraded. So we have 3 belts of input and 4 belts of output. Might be easier to just have 4 belts of input and 4 belts of output. We need to see what kind of input and output we're going to have here. Well, we get about 8.5 on a red belt. So at most, because we have to do it inside of the belt and the outside of the belt, we'd really only be able to do about 16. So what would that look like right here? That's a little more accurate. And the number we need would be 9. But because it has to be a multiple of 4, it would be 12 instead. So to have the input, and then nears and fars, and the pipes as well. So if we pick this up, like right here, and have a distance changing inserter. So we'll flip them around. And then kind of do the same thing again. Let's get it lined up, which would be somewhere around here. And the boilers would be something like this, and the steam rate is kind of high, so we'll do them kind of offset here. And we would need to get that 1200 water in here, and we might as well do that with its own dedicated pumps. And kind of don't have a lot of space on here, but I think we can kind of get it back. Look right here, and how much to fill this thing up? Probably about 50,000. Because we kind of want it to basically be maxed out, but not quite. Let's see, what is this setting it up to? 32,000. Well, this is the efficient way with using trees. So how about we set that one to 50,000. And these other ones can be like 40. Okay, pump jacks. Not much space for them here, but they fit. Speed modules. Okay. Let's give it a shot and see how it works. Seems pretty good. And this is absolutely filling up quickly. Now we just need to get those extra belts of resources in here. And we're planning on 3 additional ones. It's definitely getting to the point where this is about the maximum we can do without a bunch of trains, considering all of these belts are just delivering coal resources over there. But it's still within our capacity without the factory getting too crazy. Well, this is a little off-center, but a lot of these are turning out that way now, so oh well. And I'll just dump the crushed coal into here because it's not something we're really going to deal with that much. So we don't need to make a trash request for that. It'll just go where it needs to go. Because whenever we're working on setups where we have resources that are not often going to be in our inventory, like intermediates, like for example this processed ore, just to prevent this from getting any longer than it already is, we can just manually put the stuff in there after we're done working on setups. Well, that filled up quickly. And we can get this carbon sent up there. Because we were before, I imagine its position is probably going to move. But it was there before, so let's keep it hooked up for now. And there we go. We've got our 6 belts of fuels that we need for our ore processing here. So the fuels are taken care of. The acids are already here. Gases are nearby. And of course all the ores are available. So I think we have everything we need to work on this. But that's going to have to wait until the next episode. Thanks for watching, and I will see you later.